Hey guys, subscribe for daily knife content. And if you're shopping for knives and gear, make sure you check out the description of the video you're watching right now for links to some great online retailers. There's also individual links for knives that I personally recommend. Thanks! What's going on YouTube? Metal Complex here, and today I've got another interesting knife review slash knife overview to share with you guys. This is a knife that I've reviewed before, but it's returning in, I think, a slightly better form. This is the Kizer Domin, the large one. This newer variant has this cool sort of vintage micarta and blackwash look. But the other thing here is that the steel is in, can we see it there? N690. Now you guys might be thinking the Kizer Domin has always been an N690. The mini one was, but the large one for a long time was in VG10, which, right? I prefer N690. In fact, when I reviewed the smaller one, I said I wish, I really like the idea of the larger one, but I just would rather have N690 over VG10. Well, here we go. Now we've got it, and it comes in at a totally reasonable price too. This knife is linked right down in the description. You can pick it up right now. I don't think it's got a lot of attention on it, and frankly, I think it's kind of underrated. So check this knife out. I'll also link Kizer knives in general so you can see what else they've got going on. Thanks so much to my generous patrons for supporting me right now. You can find a link for my Patreon right down in the description. And please make sure to follow me on Instagram at metal_complex. Let's go ahead and get a measurement of this guy. Overall length of the Kizer Domin, the large Kizer Domin, coming in at about 8 inches right on the dot. Blade length is coming in at 3.5 inches on the dot, and the cutting edge is coming in at about 3.4. Pretty good ratios there. Let's go ahead and do some size comparisons up against the Ontario Rat Model 1 and its little brother, the Ontario Rat Model 2. The Domin's kind of in between, right? Definitely still a full-size knife, though. How about up against the Spyderco PM2? And hey, that piece of tape finally came off there. Good deal. And the Spyderco Para 3. We are at an angle here, so it's looking like the PM2 is almost exactly the same size. It is definitely a little bit larger. Para 3, definitely a little bit smaller. I hope I said that right. Sometimes I mix those knives up in dialogue. And last but not least, the Benchmade Griptilian, or in this case, the Ritter Hogue, and its little brother, the Benchmade Mini Griptilian. Ritter Hogue coming in exactly the same length at 8 inches. It's just a little bit more robust, a little bit taller, a little bit wider, right? Mini Griptilian, not the same, definitely smaller. Let's go ahead and do carry profile. So thickness up against the Spyderco Para 3. You can see here it's no thicker. In fact, it's exactly the same thickness. Height and length up against the PM2 and Para 3. You can see here it's not a very tall knife. Lengthwise, it's a little bit longer than the Para 3, but not by much. Not as long as the Para 3, definitely not. Truthfully, considering the size of this knife, it's really the profile's pretty good. It's not going to be difficult for people who are used to carrying full-size knives, or even people used to carrying smaller knives. It's just not going to be a difficult object to carry. Let's go ahead and do blade stock thickness here real quick. Blade stock thickness on the large Domin coming in at somewhere between 120 and 125 thousandths. That's about what I expected. No big deal at all. Materials, we have micarta, we have a steel frame or steel liners, and then we've got this N690 blade. And not anything too crazy here, anything that would cause, or that would create for excess weight. We do have, can we see it in there? Let me get my flashlight. You can get my flashlight right down in the description. We do have a little bit, it's hard to see because of can we see it there? There's some holes in there for that are made to reduce weight. So they did go ahead and take that step. That's nice. Oh my gosh, sorry about that. Weight in the Kizer Domin, 3.49 ounces. That's pretty much right on the line. If you go by the whole ounce and inch thing, right? If you don't care about ratios, it's still good. I just don't have a problem with this at all. This is going to be an easy object to carry. Let's go ahead and do a hardware check on this guy. Get out my tools. As per usual, my tools are very inexpensive and very recommendable. You can find them down in the description. I'm going to guess that this is T8 on the pivot. Yep. And then body screws, I'm pretty sure, are T6. Yeah, those are going to be T6. Same with the pocket clip screws. Not really that big of a deal, right? I prefer T8. Just be careful when you're taking things apart. Make sure you've got some good tools, quality tools, so that you're not stripping anything out, and you should be good to go. This is largely the same review as the other one. I will point out, on my own Domin, I did not realize at the time that it was like the washers. I was like, that's definitely phosphor bronze. It is, but it's a combination of phosphor bronze and nylon. I think at least on one side. That's fine. The nylon's not going to be nearly as durable, but it does create for a smoother action, and it will than just phosphor bronze by itself. It will do a good job of keeping debris out of there. If you're going to take this apart, I think the biggest risk with nylon washers in terms of like damaging them, it's not from use. It's probably from taking it apart and mishandling it, or like, you know, just, I don't know. They're really frail and flimsy. So if you take it apart, be really careful with the nylon washer. Can you have it replaced? Yeah, I don't think it's really that big of a deal, right? But it does have a nice action. It's not going to be like bearings, right? But it is nice and smooth. And the thumb studs are in a good place. It's pretty easy to deploy. And because this area right here is raised, the liner, right, or the lock section, and it's cut out right here, it's pretty easy to engage and disengage. And you know, the natural placement of your thumb when you're disengaging it is right roughly where it comes down on the sharpening choil. So because the action's not super falsetty, it's pretty easy and safe to engage and disengage this thing, right? I mean, I just don't have a problem with it. I'm happy with the action. Everything feels good. No issues there, right? Let's see here. Something that I noticed, and I think it's just because of how these are laid in here. The thumb stud here was rattling, and it's because it's kind of coming loose. I'm not a huge fan of that because there's not a way to screw that back in with a tool. I'm just using my fingers here. So the more I deploy this over and over and over again, right, the more that thing is impacting the frame, it might come unscrewed. Now, are they all going to be like that? Probably not. The best fix for this would be for me to take this off, add some Loctite to it, and then put it back on there, right? But you can't get it. You're going to have to use your fingers to screw it down. But I don't know. That was a little bit loosey-goosey. I'm sure that there are a lot of designs like that where the you know, in this case, it's the stop pins, the external stops, and the thumb stud is not press fit in there. It's just screwed in there. Most of them will be fine over time, but if you find that they're coming loose, you're definitely, especially in this case, when the studs are actually the external stops, you definitely want to make sure that that is Loctited in there so it's going to stay in there and continue to function as the stop, right? So, little nitpick. I'm sure it won't be that big of a deal over time. Just make sure, you know, if you've got one of these, check it, make sure that it's tight, because you definitely don't want that falling out. Anyways, I really like the aesthetic of this. I really, really like how this looks. I love on the Domin how the scales are shadow boxed by the liners underneath. It looks really nice. They've done a good job keeping all of those areas knocked down and not sharp. Same with the Micarta. It just really looks good. Micarta, especially, you know, this sort of vintage looking Micarta, is just going to continue to, it's going to gather more of that look the more that you use it. Your hand oils will get in there. Any, you know, any moisture that you're working in or around is going to kind of get in there and look. I mean, if you want to keep it clean, Micarta is pretty easy to scrub out with soap and water, and you can kind of bring it back to whatever its original state was. But this whole thing just looks pre-worn and used, and I kind of like that it's just it's gonna be more and more and more like that as you continue to use it, right? You can see here this is all smooth. Looks really good. Fit and finish all the way around is really, really good. Ergonomics. I mean, it's not an ergonomic masterpiece, but it's pretty darn good. It's just a big straight handle. I kind of like that. I feel free and roomy, right? There's not really a safe choke up position, but you're pretty close to the cutting edge as it is. I'm happy with it. I feel comfortable. I feel locked in. There's nothing back here that's stopping me from sliding off the back, but no, I feel pretty good. It feels comfortable. I feel confident. You know, if I was going to have to apply a whole bunch of pressure to this during a cut, would I be worried I was going to slip off of it? No, I feel pretty good. There's no jimping up here. Not that it needs it, but there just isn't any. One of my favorite things here is that this is a fully flat ground blade. It's something that I really appreciate about the Rat. There's just no awkward, wonky geometry to work around. Whatever you push this blade into, it's going to pass through it pretty easily. And there is nothing in the cutting path because, like I said, those studs double as external stops. So they have to be way back tight up against the frame. For those of you wondering, can you reverse flick it, right? Are they in that good of a position? Yes, they absolutely are. It says Kizer, there's a number on there, and then it says N690, which by the way is a very stainless steel. It's not going to hold an edge super long. It is pretty darn tough, and it's going to be very easy to sharpen. I like this steel. You know, it's kind of right around the 154 cm area. It's not going to hold an edge quite as long, but it's kind of in that same territory. I've always liked it. I don't have extensive use. I can't like tell you every last little scientific thing or how it's going to react. You know, this much cutting on this material over this amount of time. No, but I've always enjoyed the steel, and I definitely prefer it over VG10. But your opinion may vary on that. The black wash on the blade looks really good, and the final cutting bevel is even on both sides, so I don't have an issue with that. This has got a little bit more of a tip than the Rat, right, since we're comparing these two flat ground blades. This one's a little bit more pokey, so some of your puncture tests might be made easier with a blade like this. It does get pretty thin out here and pretty delicate, so I wouldn't be poking it into stuff and prying around with it or anything like that, but I think you'll be okay. Corners up here, nicely knocked down, but still at 90 degrees, so if you're going to strike a ferro rod on it or something like that, you can definitely do it. On this side, it says Domin, and then it says, oh, that's the designer's, is it AZO? I'm not going to try to pronounce it. Sorry, I don't know a whole lot about the designer, but there you go. Not a whole lot on the blade that bothers me other than this code right here, which is something that Kizer does on all of their knives. They have to have that, whatever the code is, right, for the knife, or that's what I assume it is. But okay, not really that big of a deal. All the way around, the blade, I really, really like it. In fact, the entire aesthetic of this knife is something that I really, really enjoy. I like straight lines. I like a simple aesthetic, right? So other little things that they can get right, like positioning of the thumb studs and, you know, at least some security in the ergonomics, it's all just great. Big fan of external stops, because it does mitigate pressure away from the pivots, and they seem to be a little bit more solid in terms of, like, you know, how much force it takes to feel blade play. You've got the pressure, you know, up against each of the frames, rather than the blade coming down and being seated or being sandwiched, right, between where the lock bar interacts with the tang and where the back of the blade interacts with the stop pin. No, it's actually up here. So there's 3 points of contact instead of 2, which I really like. Not everybody likes that, but I like it. Does that mean that you can take this thing out and really, really beat on it and thrash it without it breaking? Probably not. I'm not as concerned about the combination of the stops and the lock as I am with the tip of the blade. That's definitely the part that's going to fail first if you're really going to beat on this, right? That's the case with most knives, though. So anyways, moving down here, you can see we've got holes milled out so that you can put the clip on the other side. So that's great. Lefties can at least, you know, enjoy this, even though it is a right-handed liner lock. So that's fine. There's a lanyard thing. Not much room to get a lanyard in back there. Kind of would have just preferred that they didn't do it, but they did, so whatever. It's Micarta. It looks nice, right? It is, for whatever reason, kind of being, not really. It's a separate piece. This knife doesn't carry shallow. The pocket clip's good. I kind of wish it was recessed, but if that was the case, they would have to mill a little slot on this side and it might not look as good. So, okay. You can see here, because it's not recessed, it's wiggling a little bit. Now, I can fix that real quick just by tightening the screws down, which I'm going to do for the person who sent this in. But that's why I don't like clips that just sit right on top, right? Because then you got to worry, is it tightened down, right? So there we go. Get those tightened down. Does it move? No, it doesn't move now, so that's fine. The clip, I think, is a good design. Like I said, it's not carrying ultra deep, but it doesn't have to be ultra deep to be a good design. This is about all the more the knife that's going to be sticking up out of your pocket. We do have a continuous rise on the bill, and it is nicely knocked down here. So the Micarta is a little bit grippy, but not enough to really fray your pants up over time. Getting this knife in and out of the pocket should be pretty easy. You should be able to do it with one hand. So I just don't have a problem with it. The pocket clip goes with the design. Looks good, right? No issues. Centering, spot on. Lockup, we're looking at, what is this, 30% or so? No blade play up, down, left to right, and no lock stick. Pretty happy with this. This knife comes in at, I think, $55. So you're looking at this sort of vintage Micarta look, the black wash look, N690 for the blade steel, nice flat ground blade, nice full-size knife with good ratios. Milled out steel liners, right? Good action. It's built to be used. It looks nice. It's definitely built to be used. You can take this thing out, get it dirty, right? You should be able to make quick work of whatever it is that you're doing because of the blade profile. It has some quirks, but all in all, I feel like this is underrated. I have no problem with the price whatsoever. Even if you can get different steels and different stuff, that's a competitive territory right now, right? There's lots of great stuff that you can get that's arguably just as capable as this for maybe 10 bucks less. Then go for that, right? I just like the Domin. I like the design of it. What was the thing that I was going to nitpick? I kind of wish that the pocket clip was recessed. I think that would have been a little bit better. And definitely the thing with the stud, right? I kind of wish that those were like press fit, or I wish that they had a head so that if they did come undone, that I could use a tool to make sure that it's tight. Because again, these are the external stops. It needs to, without one side of that working, the knife isn't going to function the way that it's not going to lock out the way that it's supposed to. You can't depend. It'll probably still lock out, but not with nearly as much integrity as if both of them were there. So if yours is a little loose, take it out, add some Loctite to it. That might be one of those things where you go ahead and use red Loctite, right? Red Loctite, for the most part, you know, it's like keep that stuff away from your knives. Don't use red Loctite on it, but maybe for something like this, right, if you go for it, maybe see if you can undo it with your fingers, and if you can, go ahead and put some red Loctite on it. Make sure that it's going to stay in there because you do not want that falling out. Aside from that, though, very recommendable knife, very underrated knife. I think a lot of people would really enjoy this if they went for it. It's just not getting a lot of attention. You'll be able to check this out right down in the description. Make sure you check it out. Make sure you check out Kizer knives in general. But yeah, this is definitely going to go on my most recommended knives playlist and my cheap knives that I like playlist. If you guys are wondering, you know, where are knives that we can get that are inexpensive? You're always showing stuff that we can't get that's way too expensive. I have a whole playlist dedicated to budget knives that I really like that for the most part you should be able to get. Save some of the stuff that is very, very old from years ago, right? But yeah, check that playlist out. I think that's going to be pretty much it today, guys. Make sure that you follow me on Instagram at metal_complex. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a like. If you'd like to check out my other content, I do, of course, have lots of videos of knives that are either expensive or inexpensive that I do or don't like, so check those out. And if you enjoy all my content, go ahead and click on that Metal Complex logo right there and subscribe because there's definitely more coming. Thanks again for watching, everybody, and have a great day.